Right. Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to have every one of you on this webinar today. We're thrilled to have you join us as we delve into this fascinating intersection of technology and legal industry. I'm Saloni, Manager, Marketing Operations and Strategic Partnerships at Locus, and I'll be your host for today's session. For the people who are new to Locus, Locus is a legal practice management software that helps attorneys streamline their practice and manage their day-to-day processes. For today's webinar, we have an incredible line of speakers who are leaders in their respective fields, and they're quite more than ready to share their insights and expertise with us on automating lead qualification, intake, and document generation. Introducing you all to the speakers today. First of all, we have Brittany, who's the head of legal innovations at Gavel. With her extensive background in IP law and innovative tech solutions, Brittany brings us a wealth of knowledge on transforming legal processes. Next up, we have Devanshi, Customer Success Manager at Locus. As a key member of the Locus team, Devanshi's insights on leveraging technology have been invaluable. Finally, we have Elizabeth, founder of Techie PM. Elizabeth offers unique perspectives and insights on complexities of small to medium-sized law firms. Quickly moving to the agenda. In their respective order of speaking, Brittany will cover processes involved in automating the client journey, from lead generation to qualification to intake and more, and how Gavel helps streamline these processes. Next up, we will have Devanshi cover a quick overview of Locus's value propositions and how it helps attorneys streamline their day-to-day processes. At last, we'll have Beth give us a consultant's perspective by reviewing high-level strategy and analysis that goes into bringing systems together for the law firms. Before we dive into the webinar, just a quick reminder for y'all that please feel free to submit your questions in the chat box and we'll address them, as many as we can, at the end of the webinar in our Q&A session. So without further ado, I think let's get started. And Brittany, over to you.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Saloni. As you mentioned, my name is Brittany Hernandez, and I'm so excited to talk a little bit first about what we're optimizing and automating for, and where these different touch points can happen along the client's journey. So when we're thinking about how we want to introduce legal technology into our legal practices, we really want to take that client-centered approach to legal design and tech implementation. And one of the ways that we can always start to think about where automation and these different tools can be useful in our practice, it's useful to map out this journey just right on paper, like this, for example. So this is just an overall example of how a law firm might go through having a client walk through the different touch points of working with them as a firm in their sales lifecycle, for example. So I'm just calling this the 6-part client journey. You might have different steps along the way. You might add or subtract some based on your personal practice, but this is just a general idea. And so we're going to talk about each step. I'm going to show you different examples of how you might use Gavel and Lawcus together to kind of accomplish making these really seamless for the client journey. But when we talk about this first piece, we're talking about lead generation and qualification with a call to action. So what that might look like is you have what's called a lead magnet, where you are attracting a customer, a new prospect to your business through offering a piece of value for free in exchange for someone's email, for example. Now, my proposition with Gavel is that you can kind of accomplish both at the same time by creating a workflow, which I'll explain when I show you in a moment, something that both attracts someone to your website because of what it is and the value that it brings, but also qualifies leads at the exact same time and calls them to action, which also, because you're entering some information, automatically feeds into a system like Locus, for example, which can trigger a nurture campaign. When we talk about a nurture campaign, we're talking about this idea that typically when people are considering whether they're going to purchase something such as your services or something, even on Amazon, for example, or some other type of from some type of business, there usually needs to be a couple of different times that they see or hear from you to build trust in order to, especially if your services are expensive. For example, if you're offering a uniform statutory power of attorney package or estate plan for $5,000, then someone really needs to be able to, you need to earn their trust through something like a nurture campaign, which can look like a drip campaign of emails, let's say 8 over the course of 8 weeks, once a week, that offers some additional insights into whatever their matter might be based on what they interacted with us in that lead generation and qualification workflow that I'll show you an example of. Now, once somebody takes action on your nurture campaign, or if they have done that initially from the get-go with your lead generation and qualification tool, they would go through a process of something like initial intake forms, discovery call, and a conflict check that you would do internally to make sure, obviously, that there are no conflicts of interest between you representing this person and maybe other people you've represented in the past, and so on. So along the way, we have then that moving us into client engagement. So after we've done our conflict check and we've been able to, say that they are someone we can work with, we're able to take on their matter, we'll engage them as a client. And I'll show you how you can automate that piece as all the way through signature as well. Then we can go and move into services or document delivery. And then after that's done, online payments. And there's different ways that you can structure that, either through value-based billing, if you wanted to use a Gavel Stripe integration, for example, to have that collected before a document is output, for example, or you can use Lawcus's invoicing and time entry features as well. So after we move through this process of services and document delivery, as well as payment, what we want to be able to do in the next stage is to upsell our current customers, meaning they've done something with us. Maybe they have done their power of attorney with us, but now we'd love for them to do their will with us. So maybe we put them, after they've completed their services with us and they've been happy with our services, we can send them information via a newsletter that tells them the benefits of obtaining a will or whatever else. When I'm talking about promoters, and what we're talking about here is this idea that a happy customer might be someone who would refer us or write a review for us or bring in other business, and they're called promoters. So you can do something like an NPS score, a net promoter score, where you ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend our business to someone else? You can ask for things like Google reviews, referrals from other friends of theirs, and so on. So as you can see, this is sort of the high-level overview and mapping of different touch points along the way of a client's journey of them becoming a customer with you. Now, I'd love to show you some examples of how you can use Gavel to streamline this experience, not only for the client, but also for you as the lawyer who's managing this particular type of case. So let's start, as I mentioned, from the very beginning in this box here around lead generation and qualification with a call to action. So I'm going to show you kind of the user or client journey experience first, and then I'll kind of lift up under the hood and show you a little bit of what's happening in the background from using Gavel, and then what's happening in Locus as well in this particular example. So in this scenario, let's say that your firm is an expert in US veteran law, and you generally like to help people apply for different types of grants when they're disabled. So one thing I'll quickly note is there are going to be people who come to you because they heard from a friend, they went to your website and they automatically want to convert into talking to you, and they know that they want to talk to you. So one way you can do that is to have calls to action, such as book a discovery call, right? Where in this particular section, you have it linked directly over to your, let me go into Locus for a second. They'll book directly into your calendar. So let me go into here and show you that under apps and integrations, you can sync your email and your calendar, as well as create an appointment scheduler. And then you can have that appointment scheduler here. You can have multiple different types, and you can have that directly embedded into your website. So somebody can just go in and say, I'd like to pick a time at this time, and I'm going to confirm here, and so on. So obviously you want that information to feed from your website into your single source of truth, which would be something like a Lawcus, right? Same thing here with a contact us form. You could have an intake kind of, if they have any questions, they can do that. And this is going to be a form that I built out in Locus as well. Now, for something where you want to be able to qualify them at the same time as bring them in, one thing you might do is to embed a Gavel workflow into a blog post, for example, because one major lead magnet is an article. Somebody is at home and they have an issue that they're working it with, and they're Googling or typing into a search engine, what do I do if I'm disabled and I need to, get money to expand different parts of my house, or whatever the search terms might be. And you would optimize your blog and your posts for those types of key search terms, right? So in our case, let's say that because you're an expert in this area, the person lands on your blog post about how you might be eligible to get up to $117,000 to adapt your home to accommodate for a disability that was connected to your service. Now, what I've done here is I've actually embedded a white labeled, meaning this is a Gavel workflow, but it's branded to match my colors on my website. I've embedded that into this blog here to make it more interactive and to automatically qualify and help someone understand what types of eligibility they might have, right? So in my case, what I have here is some questions around whether they might be eligible for this type of grant. In this case, they need to have one of the following service-connected disabilities. And so let's say they have this one or this one. Now, we also ask for their prefix, first name, last name, and email address, right? Because we want to collect a little bit of information about them. We could have this one or not, depending on what types of information you want to collect. In my case, I have a letter that's going to be generated. So I'm making this for the address block. And then I'm going to ask them, how will you be using the grant money? Are you going to be using it to buy, build, or change your permanent home? Yes or no? And you'll see that things will expand or contract depending on their answer. This is due to something called question logic. So when I go in to show you Gavel a little bit, I'll show you that we can hide or show different questions depending on multiple layers of logic. For example, if I had said in my first answer, none of the above instead of one of the other options, then I'm actually going to get kicked out of the workflow and you're going to see a different outcome. Now, this is an example of page logic. You can see here that it says, sorry, you may not be eligible for this type of grant. Here's a personalized letter for you with more information. So the person's going to be able to see that you may qualify for other types of grant, but it's going to depend on the circumstances of your case. So in this case, they've received now a personalized letter that is from us and perfectly formatted that tells them why they're not eligible based on this particular, what their answers were, right? Now, in this case, it's because to be eligible, you need to have a qualifying service-connected disability. The VA states that these reasons, you may book a consultation with us, but we might have to look at a different type of grant for you. Now, let's try again. Let's say I do have one of these, but I'm going to answer something like no to this question, right? What we'll see is the difference between the answer that this person was given. And this is going to be something that I did in what's called our Gavel word add-in to make the conditions of a letter, for example, show or hide depending on particular logic. Now, this person also is not eligible, but for a different reason. Based on your answers, you may not be eligible. You need to be using the grant money to buy, build, or change your permanent home to qualify. Now, lastly, for this particular people who are not qualified, let's do one where they have this and this one, they say yes, but on this one, they say no. Now we can see a third scenario where the person gets kicked out again for a different reason. Now we're saying you need to be using the grant money to buy, build, or change your permanent home and own the home or be in a position where you will own the home in the future to qualify for this type of grant. So you can see that we're, based on people's few questions and answers, able to push people through different branches of logic And we're qualifying these different leads that we've generated from this blog post and from their quick ability to get an answer through this short workflow that's embedded directly into our website. And we can understand whether they may or may not be eligible. Now let's go through one where the person does qualify and what happens next, right? So in this one, they are yes and yes. So for this particular grant, the person has to have a service-connected disability that qualifies. They need to be using the money for this purpose, and they need to be in a position to own, or they will own the home. Now we have a very different outcome, right? What do we see here? We see, thank you, Mary, view your decision letter below. They can go in and they can look at their particular letter. We can see, dear Ms. Watson, based on your answers, you may be eligible for this type of grant. We'd love to meet with you in the next week or so to discuss the next steps for helping you in submitting your application. You can book a time on our calendar here, and that would open up to your calendar that's sent connected to Lawcus, for example. So the person can go in, they can sign in with Google here, for example, so that they can have their information auto-populate and synced to their own calendar. They'll be able to see that their name automatically populates. They're going to see when they're available as well, and the times that cross over. They can say submit, and they'll be added to their calendar automatically. Now, they also automatically receive an email from us saying, hey, Mary, your decision letter is here inside. Now, the reason for this is we want to make sure we're getting in their inbox just in case they navigate away from this page and they lose access to our call to action, right? So they can book a discovery call with us. This is our call to action. They can review their letter here as well. And this has all been completed within Gavel. Now, another thing we can notice as well is that Mary Watson has automatically been added to our Locus database, right? So our next speaker will go into Locus in a few minutes. And what we'll see is they've automatically been added as a prospect without me as the lawyer having to do anything at all. They interacted with our website, they interacted with our workflow that we created in Gavel, and we saw the different branching logics to qualify this lead. And we only had the people who actually qualified to work with us based on their answers get added into our system as a prospect. However, that doesn't mean that any of the other information was lost, because we also have this information automatically getting fed through into Gavel as well. And Gavel looks like this. So we can see all of the different times that I just went through this and answered different questions differently, right? In order to show you the different outcomes. So this is what Gavel looks like. And the fun part here is that I use Zapier to create that connection. Zapier is a third-party tool that allows you to do lots of different things with triggers and actions to different disconnected tools and connects them together. So I said when a workflow is completed in Gavel, I want you to create a lead in Locus. I want you to assign that person at a particular practice area of veteran law. I want you to show me when it was created, and I want you to automatically add them to the pipeline as a prospect. So I can move them around as I need to, depending on if they, need to be converted to a matter, or if we did our initial consultation or whatever else. So in my last minute or so, I just wanted to show you two more pieces. The first one is, now that you have that information stored within your Gavel account as well as in Locus, you're able to go into that next stage around nurturing your leads by doing things under the automations tab in Locus to say, when a person is added to the prospect pipeline, I want you to send them a drip campaign of emails that educate them about this matter and call them to action along the way. Also, when we're ready to engage them as a client, what I can do here is go into the grant, the workflow that I just created. I can choose that particular session, and I can say, I want to now prepare the limited scope engagement agreement for them. I can push the information in. It's going to automatically populate the information that we already have on them, that they already filled out. And we just fill out other pieces of information, such as the matter title, any included services, for example, any excluded services, perhaps the compensation that will be associated with this matter. And then we can also, at this last piece, submit this for DocuSign signature by saying submit for signing. We can also review this beforehand to make sure everything has pushed through as we wanted to in our particular agreement. So now this person will receive, for example, this email saying, please complete and review this document. My time's almost up, so I'm just going to quickly just show you. Obviously, this person would go through, they would say sign here, they would adopt a signature, say finish, and now the attorney of record is going to receive the email as well to send that, to have that sent for signature. And then once we do that, we're going to be able to track the status of each of those envelopes that we've sent here on the back end where it says sent for signature. So that's just a high level overview. I don't want to go over on my time and share it with my fellow speakers, but that's just to give you a brief overview of how you can connect and look at the process that you're trying to optimize for here and say, okay, we can actually create a lead generation magnet or a lead magnet, at the same time as qualifying those leads, calling them to action if there's somebody that we want to work with, automatically add those people as prospects into our Locus or other single source of truth for the nurture campaign. We can use that same information to have the client engagement letter filled out and sent for signature. And then from there, we can use the same information to push into other document generation, things like preparing a power of attorney or other types of documents. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the time over to Devanshi, who's going to go a little bit deeper into Locus specifically.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Hi, guys. My name is Devanshi, and I'll be covering a bit of Locus of how you'll see the leads coming in from Gavel inside Locus and how you can manage them inside Locus and do your client handle. So Locus is basically an all-in-one software for your legal practice management. You can automate processes, you can manage your tasks, you can manage your cases, you can do your billing, your invoicing, and even give the clients the access to their portals inside Locus. Basically, you'll be able to manage everything from when you get a lead till the time the client hires you and till the time you have completed the process for them and the case is closed. So I'm going to share my screen and I'll show you a brief of how Locus looks like and what you can manage inside Locus. Meanwhile, Brittany also showed us how you can see the appointments inside Locus, how you get the leads from Gavel. So I'm going to share a bit of more insight on Locus. So this is basically a Locus dashboard that you can see everything over here. Like it's a brief of what's going on in your Locus account, like how many leads did you get, even from Gavel if you want to see that, and other places also you're getting leads from, and what is your total overview, like revenue you have generated, how much is still invoiced, not invoiced, all your events for the day. You'll be able to see on the dashboard, but in depth, we have everything that you can see, like any events that people schedule from the scheduler that you send out from Gavel, or maybe that's available on your website. All your events will be available over here on your calendar. So this calendar will basically be linked and it will be a two-way sync with your Google or Outlook calendar, which you'll be able to schedule events from Locus, or you can schedule from your websites by putting in the appointment scheduler on your websites, or you can do from Calendly, or you can do directly from your Google and Outlook calendar. Basically, since it's a two-way sync, you use any platform and it is going to show up on both Locus and on your Google and Outlook site. Then when you get leads from Gavel, like the leads are generated via Zapier, obviously. So whenever people sign up on Gavel and the leads are generated via Zapier, all your prospects will show up over here in the leads section in the intake pipeline. So leads and matters, there are two things on Locus that you'll find. So lead is basically a potential client. Those have still not hired you, whereas matters is your actual clients. So because from Gavel, you'll be obviously getting your potential clients. So the Zapier that you set up will be the create lead, which is going to create the lead in the prospect. Now, these stages that you see, prospect, follow-up, nurturing, these are basically stages that can be customized. And this is a breakdown of your bigger process that you'll see inside Locus, like maybe the step-by-step process that you follow. So this is the step 1, step 2, step 3. So this is how you'll manage your leads and your clients inside Locus. And maybe once you're ready for the client, you've done all the initial discussions with them and the client is ready to hire you, you can convert it to matter. This means now they are no more your prospect. They have now become your actual clients. and you can manage all your documents, your events, everything directly from inside Locus. Any files you have, you can upload inside Locus. Any meetings you have, you can do inside Locus. Any tasks you have, like maybe for yourself or other teammates, you can manage from that inside Locus. Any billings you want to do, whether you want to do on hourly rate, flat rate, you can manage all of that inside Locus. And plus, in case you want to automate these processes, like maybe sending emails, sending SMS, sending documents, sending e-signature requests, or sending the forms as well, you can automate all of these processes directly from Locus. Like wherever you feel the need that the process is same for all of my clients, and wherever you need to save time, you can just go ahead and create workflows. So workflows is eventually going to save you time, and the system is going to do those things on backend for you. And when the system does those things, you'll see everything in the history, whether my workflow is working, whether the things are happening on time or not, and you'll be able to see all of the statuses of the workflows over here. So in case any workflow is not working, it's giving errors, you will receive the notifications via email, so you can see and come back and rectify the workflow. But this is the place where all of the automations will happen. In case you want to document, like automate your documents, you can use document templates where the system will automatically like pull in the details from Locus and create the document for you automatically. In case you want to do e-signature request, you can directly send e-signature request from within Locus, and the clients will receive the email. You will also keep getting notifications once the client signs it, and it will automatically put the signed document inside Locus. So any of this where you want to save time and you want to do those things automatically and avoid those things you doing or maybe your teammates doing, you can create workflows. So workflows basically like have a trigger, maybe the start point that you can say. If the start point is successful, the workflow is going to run automatically and going to do those things for you automatically. Maybe a drip campaign you want to send out, like maybe you want to do follow-ups after every 5 days or maybe after every 3 days. So accordingly, you can create a workflow for you. Like this is an example for a drip campaign. As soon as a lead is created, maybe after 2 days, I want to send an email. After 3 days, I want to send another email. After 5 days, I want to send another email. So this is a similar kind of workflow that you can build and automate things around Locus. So this was it from my end. In case like anybody has questions, they can post it in the chat and I'll hand it over to Beth now.
All right, I need to get the video sharing capability. And if not, I can just not see
I
my
just made
face.
you the host.
Okay, sounds good. Here you go. Can you see me?
Perfect.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I am Beth Kostelnik. I'm an attorney in Illinois. I practice estate law, and I'm also the owner of Techie PM. So about 6 years ago, I decided to start my law practice focusing on estate law. And I very naively felt like I was going to have the most efficient practice you could possibly imagine. I have a background in technology implementations for the management consulting industry. So working kind of in the corporate world for major implementations and helping people adopt technology. So I was like, this is going to be a piece of cake because this is my background. This is my bread and butter. I'm going to hang up my shingle. I'm going to get all my processes down. At the time I was pregnant with my daughter, and I was thinking, well, I'll use that time of waiting for her arrival and some of that maternity time to really knock things out and get it together. Which I'm not sure about where you guys all are in your process of getting your system set up for your law firms. But as you can imagine, it can be quite overwhelming. When you get to the small to medium-sized law firms, there are so many different tools out there. And especially in my case, I didn't have my processes really clearly defined. It was very much like shiny object syndrome. Like, oh, that looks like it's really important. Let me get that on board. Wait, oh my gosh, I don't have that thing set up yet. Let me get that on board. And I was really looking at all of these different technologies, feeling very overwhelmed and honestly spending way too much of my time building these out for my law firm. Some of you I saw that there are some members of the Estate Planning Lawyers Tech Junkies Facebook group here that are in the presentation, participants. But that's where that Facebook group was born, is I just needed to connect with other people who were a few steps ahead of me to say, hey, like, what the heck are you guys doing? And we started kind of inviting different tools and different softwares to come speak and help us sort through it all. And so as time went on, I did start, implementing these things and getting more comfortable. And I just recognized that there's such a gap for these small to medium-sized law firms to be able to kind of bridge that piece of, they know they need something, you need something, but you're not quite sure how to get there. Not everybody has a background in technology implementations, as of course, and not everybody needs to become an expert in implementing and configuring their own technology. And I really love doing it. It was my favorite distraction from legal work, was getting my tech set up and revamping it and making it better and optimizing. And I just decided that I wanted to focus on it, and I created Techie PM. So about 3 years ago, I created Techie PM, and it's going strong. And that's exactly what we do, is we try to solve for that gap of, you have somebody who knows they need the technology, or they know they need to upgrade their technology or optimize it, meeting them where they are and helping them get really confident with their technology from a practice management standpoint. And so that's what we do at Techie PM. So the technology implementation journey, I just wanted to touch on this briefly to explain a little bit about the mindset that goes into actually getting the technology up and running and getting your team comfortable and adopting the technology. Whether you're doing it on your own, or whether you are looking for outside support from a consulting firm like Techie PM, I still recommend walking through these steps and spending some time kind of in each one for kind of best results of the technology implementation and your team's adoption of it. So step one has to do with likely why you're here, right? The education and strategy component is, maybe you have Gavel or you have Lawcus, or you're considering one or both of them. And so you're here to become educated on what can these systems do. I can see in the chat and the question and answers, so some people are looking at it and saying like, oh, well, can you do this? Or would you be able to replace this tool? That's what this education and strategy is all about, is making sure you have a good handle on your own internal processes, and as well as where your biggest pain points are, the things that you want to address. Then understanding the different technology systems out there and their capabilities and how they can help solve your problems, right? And building into that strategy is going to get you really confident with the choices you're making. It's going to help you reduce that kind of shiny object syndrome, because you'll be like, you know what? Nope, I've got my systems good enough where I need it right now. I see the value. I'm not going to go start implementing something new just because it's the latest thing that's on the market, or there's been an upgrade to one of the softwares that are out there. And so now you want to jump ship from your current setup. It gets you really confident with your decision making with technology. And that's something with Techie PM, we kind of help expedite that education, that learning curve, so people can be confident in what their kind of tech stack, if you've heard that word, is your tech stack is all of the different technologies that make up your firm and support your processes. Make sure they're confident with their tech stack. So once we have everything down of what we need, what the processes are, why we're doing it, and what tools we're going to use to solve it, then we get into converting that information into the system build requirements. So what specifically needs to be built out in each of the systems to make it work in that way that's going to provide that incredible value for you? Go forward with actually building those things in the systems, configuring your systems, and going through testing. So for testing, there's a few different layers, right? You have the testing inside the system itself, but then also, how does it play nice with your other tools? How does that, if you're mapping fields, or you're using something like Zapier that Brittany introduced, making sure that they're playing nice and the right things are loading up in the right spaces. And then possibly one of my favorite parts, and maybe arguably the most important, is your user acceptance testing, right? To make sure, especially if you have a team. If you have a team of people, then you want to make sure that you're incorporating them to get their insight. So often my clients, I'll be working with kind of the managing attorney or the owner, and they know what everybody does, and we kind of map out a process. But then when that intake specialist or that virtual assistant or the receptionist or that paralegal, they get in the system, then they can say, oh, you know, this would have been really helpful if this was broken into 2 forms, or we rearranged this. And those little bits and pieces and tweaks that not only are going to make it a better experience for them, they're going to be more invested and more likely to adopt the technology. One of the big mistakes I made with my law firm is I am an early adopter, a tech enthusiast, and I kept changing things too fast for people to keep up with, which was a major dissatisfier for my team, which I'm very grateful that they were able to open up to me about that. And we were able to kind of like work through taking a step back and slowing down. But that's something that you want to keep into consideration, because you just don't want to be too much too quick if your team's not ready for it. And one way to do that is user acceptance testing, bringing them in the loop before you formally go live so they can be really confident with what they have to do. The next step has to do with the training. So training for your team, any end users that will be touching the system, but also to have materials ready for any sort of new hires. A lot of time people are coming to me because they want to get their firm to be able to scale up for a large volume of clients. Maybe there's a big marketing initiative coming up. Maybe they have big goals for their revenue in the upcoming years, and they're planning to expand their team. While you're in it, while you're in the weeds here, and you're going through the education system build and testing, let's get those training materials knocked out so that when somebody comes on board, you have kind of go ahead and spend an hour, spend a couple hours going through our technology training materials that will go through our processes and how that relates to the technology you'll be using, to give them the opportunity, again, to start building their confidence and also hopefully alleviating some of that onboarding time that you're going to have with future staff members that are going to have to adopt your technology. And then, of course, if you are using a consulting company, is making that transition back to operations so that the firm operations can maintain the system. And sometimes Techie PM, we will also stay engaged for ongoing operation support until the firm feels comfortable maintaining the systems by themselves. So that's a little bit about the technology implementation journey and a little bit of the framework that we come to with our clients. And I'm going to assume today that most of you are in this step 1, at least in this particular topic about considering Gavel and Lawcus and optimizing them, that you're trying to have a deeper understanding of the capabilities and how it can work for your firm. So I'm going to go through kind of an example that is, you've come through the conclusion, and hopefully by the great presentations that you saw just a moment ago, you can see how powerful the document generation capabilities of Gavel can be, right? Like you saw the example of having it be a lead magnet, but for the estate attorneys in the room, I mean, you could obviously see like, oh my gosh, I can get all those real estate documents in there. I can get all those extra kind of guardianship nomination forms in there. Like, hopefully your brain is starting to have all of your aha moments. It's super powerful document generation. So I'm going to assume in the example I have that you see that value, and that's something that you want to leverage from Gavel. And then of course the Locus is a phenomenal practice management tool with all of those capabilities that were just described. But I'm going to focus on the workflow automations because in my opinion, that's something that really makes Locus shine in some ways that other practice management tools just can't match up. So the first example is to talk about a lead magnet. So very similar to Brittany's presentation, but I'm going to focus on estate law. So getting into the mind of like understanding the art of the possible, what can be done. I'm going to talk about what are some lead magnets that you may consider for estate law. So, I don't know about you, but if you have people coming and they're saying, I don't think I need a trust, I just need something really simple, or so-and-so told me that they got a trust, so I think I need one. So maybe you can have some questions coming in from a Gavel questionnaire that will help guide them towards making a decision for a will or trust, some sort of educational document that helps them weigh the pros and cons, but you can customize it through that conditional logic in the document to get them something more meaningful. Talk to them, right? They're talking to you by giving you data, and through the capabilities of Gavel, you can talk back to them without ever actually saying anything, right? That can all be done on the back end, which is an incredible tool. So, that applies for all of these different lead magnets. If you're a high net worth estate lawyer, how do I avoid estate taxes? Maybe that's going to be an estate tax calculator. There's kind of some calculations and some analysis of planning considerations around that. That could be a very personalized lead magnet. When somebody comes for estate administration, especially when I started getting more leads from kind of the general public, I had a lot of leads come to me for estate administration that really couldn't afford an attorney. It really didn't need probate. It was just like, hey, there's this like $2,000 bank account and the bank won't talk to me, right? So that you have those those people who need support, need some guidance, but it's also really not worth your time from a business management perspective to spend a ton of time with them. So one way you can do that is maybe provide some guidance with a questionnaire, getting some circumstances that will help them get some tips and tricks and things to consider if they're going to be handling the estate administration for somebody, and help guide them to whether they might need to hire an attorney or whether you recommend a consultation for you based off of the variables that they give you. And also even just like simple documents to be available on your website to just for that brand recognition component of bringing people in. Maybe you have a small estate affidavit that they can plug and play and get a draft of a small estate affidavit with instructions to execute the document. And the last one is for parents of minor children. I had a lot of parents of minor children as my clients, so a lot of my messaging and branding was associated with reaching out to the fellow mamas out there that have their kids and don't want to think about if something happens to them. And so to create something specific for an estate planning guide for parents of minor children. So I just wanted to give you some examples again to start thinking through what are some things like in your practice areas that you might be able to come up with. And then I'm going to walk through kind of how these systems can work together with this type of use case. So right here, we'll have the PNC is going to submit the Gavel workflow. Okay, that'll be step one. We'll talk about how they get to that workflow in a minute. Then they receive the customized guide, and we'll talk about the different ways they can receive it in the upcoming slides. And then as you kind of saw, and you can probably connect the dots from the previous presenters, the PNC is going to be loaded into Locus. And then that's where you get to start leveraging those amazing Locus automations to make your workflows more efficient and also to help keep everybody on the same page and making sure no lead gets lost. And then the goal of this workflow is to get somebody on your consultation calendar so that, and let me qualify this to get a qualified lead on your calendar for a consultation. And whatever this process might look for you, it might vary from person to person as far as kind of what types of automations and things you want to support this workflow. But we're going to walk through kind of a very simple way again to kind of get the juices flowing for the art of the possible. First, starting with the PNC submits a Gavel workflow. So as Brittany shared, there's basically two different ways you can get them to be filling out this Gavel workflow if they're going to be filling in the form directly. You can send a direct link, which still offers that white labeling that Brittany mentioned, which was about having it look like it's from you. So like here is the logo for my law firm. And just an example of a random screenshot I picked of one of these questionnaires. So you can see it's like a really, really pretty, like good user experience. It guides people through their questions. So it's a totally sufficient way of sending out a questionnaire. And where I would see this and where I've used this in my law firm specifically is like if I was doing a webinar, if I was using those marketing channels, like maybe the follow-up email from a webinar would include a link, or maybe I would have posted the link inside the chat during a webinar that it would just take them right there to just kind of get to the point. If they're interested in that giveaway that I'm allowing through the webinar as my lead magnet, like just get it to them right when they want it and then get them right to the website to fill that in. But then there's also the embedded version that Brittany went over with her example. And this might be where people are, browsing your site, they're exploring you, and then they're like, oh, that would be a helpful thing for me to know. I do wonder what my estate tax liability would be. And you can embed it here so they don't even know that they're in a different system, which is amazing. When they submit the questionnaire, you have options for what happens on this landing page. You can have them download from this spot right here, as Brittany showed that, where she clicked the letter and it just opened up. Or you could have it just be a landing page that they're later going to receive the document in a different way. I love the idea that you can put these kind of calls to action buttons here on the landing page. So maybe if it's a specific workflow for a specific topic, you can, entice them with some sort of call to action with this button, and they bounce to, a blog post, website, landing page, whatever it is, that's going to guide them on basically like, hey, this is why we're so awesome, and this is why you should consider hiring us. Just keeping those touch points going and staying front of mind right when they're thinking about it. So now moving into the PNC is going to receive a customized guide from your firm and how they can do it. this is an example of you have it emailed to them. So they would have the landing page that you can still have that button, but they're just not going to download it right there after they submit. You can have Gavel automatically send them this this attachment that will be customized with all of that conditional logic that you had, you know, previously programmed to give them that very personalized experience. And then you can also have them download it directly from the page as well. And I should say too, and in some cases, maybe you don't want this to be automatic. Like maybe you want there to be a bit of a delay or a little bit of a human touch in there before they get this deliverable. That's another good example of, you know, you can have this maybe, you know, emailed to somebody who's going to be responsible for it, and it could be a task for them to complete, to make sure that they send it out with a more personalized message or something that if you don't want to completely automate this piece of it. Okay, so now we're talking about this step where the PNC gets loaded into Lawcus for follow-up automations. So after it gets submitted through a Zapier integration, you can have these leads populate with pre-populating different fields and things that are based off of what they submitted or based off of the type of workflow that they filled out, which is great. And then once it's in there, you get all that magic that Locus can do with the automations, which is awesome. One of my favorite automations to implement for law firms is using and maximizing tasks when any tool offers it. So Locus offers a great task management system that's a nice place to just kind of centralize all the things, keeping you organized, ability for you to have insights for what your team is working on, ability to see if something fell through the cracks or was forgotten about, getting that all centralized as much as you can. And then that centralizing task management plus automations, then you have tasks going through to your team or to yourself or whatever it is without having to have a manual piece to it, right? So in this example, we can have the questionnaire submitted, the lead gets populated into Locus, and then this task gets created, let's say with like an intake specialist or a client services representative or something. And then you can create this task so they know there's something new on their plate, again, with no intervention from a management or a lead attorney or anything. You can have this task come up on their plate. You can determine, you know, when it's actually due, you know, the start date and when you would hope that this would get completed by. You can have a very descriptive title that pulls in fields, you know, so I pulled in Mickey Mouse's name here. So the task even shows like what they're, you know, who they're working with. And I also love this feature that you can put tags on tasks. It's really popular now that people are trying to do time blocking on their calendars. And so when you have a centralized task management system, and let's say you're doing like follow-ups and you want to, you know, you're just going to knock out all your phone calls for the day or whatever it is, you can have a tag that indicates that type of work based off of how you like to block your calendar. And then you can filter out all the tasks that are in your name that kind of qualify for the type of work you want to do. I love when people implement that kind of system. And then also the training component that these automated tasks can provide. So here isn't just a quick example is like, please attempt 2 phone calls and 1 email to Mickey Mouse. So whatever your process might be for that nurture campaign or what this person would be responsible for, you can be very clear in your instruction right here. You know, making it so they don't have to be like, oh, what was I supposed to do here? Especially when you have new staff joining on board. Guide them through what exactly they need to do so they can bring kind of meaningful questions to you or meaningful kind of unique situations to you, but not for the basics that maybe they just, when they heard it the first time, it just wasn't the time they needed to know it, right? So like these tasks can help guide them through what you want them to be doing. So you can have a nice little narrative in here for the task description, but you can also put subtasks so they can kind of track what they're doing as they're going along. You know, completed phone call attempt number 1 and check it off. You'll have the option to put a comment on the bottom saying, you know, I did this and they didn't call back or whatever the case is. So you can do check boxes here. And I see some questions coming in. So I'm almost done with my slides and then we're gonna move to Q&A. And then here we have I wanted to talk through all right, let me go back here. So we're ending this like kind of workflow that I was describing here, right? So the idea is that your intake specialist gets this task assigned. They follow the tasks exactly what you wanted them to do. On attempt number 2, they were able to get a hold of them. They qualified them as a great ideal client. And now it's going to get on your calendar and then also continue through more Locus automations that keep making this a really efficient and awesome process. So just to be clear about what was required to actually make that workflow happen that I just described, fill in the form, get the lead magnet, start off the Locus integration, get the task automatically assigned. It was a Gavel workflow that we built out. It was a Zap and Zapier, and it was a Locus automation. So those were the 3 pieces that made that magic happen. I did want to walk through very briefly another, just to get the ideas and kind of the light bulbs going off of different ideas that you may use this in your law firm. You can also use Gavel as your detailed questionnaire. So in this example, I just said the PNC schedules a consultation in Calendly. There's a lot of big Calendly fans in there. I'm pretty sure Locus has an integration, but you also have the Locus scheduler as well if you, to schedule direct. Let's say they schedule an appointment, whatever system you're using, and they're in Calendly. So then we get it to create the lead in Locus. And then this is where a point in the process where you can say, as soon as that lead is created, what do I want somebody to do? Is it something I do? Is it something my team does? And then you can go ahead and create some follow-up tasks or maybe automated communications to the person who schedules the appointment. You know, whatever that process will be, the first steps when there's a lead. What do you want to happen? Create an automation when that happens, when that action takes place. So then let's say that the Locus automation invites the lead to fill out the detailed questionnaire. It's very common for estate attorneys and I'm sure in other practice areas as well, that before you get to like the detailed like 2-hour consultation, 1.5 to 2-hour consultation of like a planning session, you want to get a lot of input from them. You can have all of that data entry come in through Gavel. They can basically create Gavel like it's like a data entry portal, and you can invite them and lead them to that through automations after they schedule your consultation. And then you could also have Gavel and Locus communicate as to the status of completion of the questionnaire and have additional tasks or automations that are based on that trigger. Okay, it's the questionnaire has been completed. Are there any other steps that needs to take place there? So I just wanted to give this as another example of where Gavel's kind of used as its own like account and portal for the client, and then how that can be intertwined with the capabilities of different systems like Calendly and Locus. I think that's everything for me. I can keep presenting if you want, Brittany, if you want me to keep this open for the last slide.
Thank you. I think Saloni's gonna pick up questions and then close us out.
Anybody has any questions? I think we've answered most of the questions. We have this one last question, I guess, Beth, it's for you. So Sabrina says she's using Slack and she wants to send tasks and follow-ups via Slacks. So is there any messaging system in Locus or integration to Slack the tasks? No. Like in Locus, you don't have a direct integration, but I think you can set up something using Zapier.
Yeah, and I see Brittany's also answering this question. Because they play nice together and they have that Zapier integration, I'm sure there are creative solutions to bring in Slack in a way that will be meaningful for your workflow. So if that's a place that you guys are used to being kind of your central hub of notifications, I don't have an answer off the top of my head, but I am sure that is something that can be tackled through the Zapier integration since all these tools play so nice together. But you can also think about what is it that Slack is meeting for you regarding lots of things, but task management specifically. because what I often find is when people start getting to that centralization, like all of the matter information is in the same place, all of the task information is in the same place, like you're just kind of logging into that same location. Oftentimes the need for like a secondary tool to communicate about status of things isn't as necessary as it once was. Like you can kind of work from within the tool itself, and it might be a change or a process change, but it might be worth it. So that's part of that education and strategy component, is deciding, is it worth it? Is it worth it to work in one system, or is it worth exploring an avenue to create these through Zapier, because there's certain things in Slack that you just absolutely love and you don't want to do without.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think the biggest thing I wanted to just add is to kind of say the same point that Beth mentioned, which is that you want to think about the way that works best for you and not try to like force something that's like too far outside of what you're already using. So you can integrate these tools together in a way that works for you. There's another question around, does Locus require that all users be at the same subscription level, or can each user have a different subscription or license level? I think that's for Devanshi to answer. We'll just answer that one live.
So basically, Locus will require you to have the subscription level at the same level for all users. You can control the access of what people can access, like what type of permissions they have inside Locus, but the subscription level will be same for all the users.
Amazing. Just so then how do you segregate user permissions for lower users?
On Locus, you have the capability, like the owner and permissions for the other attorneys, paralegals, or the staff members that you add inside Locus. And there in the custom roles, you can control what permissions you want to give them, whether you want to give them the permissions for billing, or whether you want to give them the permissions for accounting, or you want them to access the workflows or access your email templates or e-signature templates. So there is a variety of options available where you can control the access of each type of user that you want to add in Locus.
Amazing. Just to kind of quickly mention, there were a ton of great questions throughout this presentation in the Q&A section. So if you wanted to, as an attendee, just kind of quickly review to see if there were any questions that came up that you might want to know the answers to, we tried to answer all of them as we were going along. So you can check those out there. So thank you for everyone who submitted a question. We're right almost at time. So I think I'll just maybe go over this quick slide and then we'll just say thank you at the end. So for next steps, you can reach out to Beth to start optimizing your processes and create a harmonized tech ecosystem within your law firm. You can also reach out to me to learn more about Gavel. You can also start a free 7-day trial at gavel.io to start building out your first automation like you saw. And you can also learn more about Lawcus and start your free trial at lawcus.com. If we want to go over to the next slide, you can also see our email addresses all here if you wanted to reach out to each of us individually. Just thank you all so much for being here and for your time and attention. Beth, did you want to have any closing remarks?
No, thank you for having me. I love geeking out on this stuff. So hopefully you all found value, and it was really nice kind of seeing how you framed up the workflows too. So thanks for having me be a part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone needs to go, you can go ahead and go. It looks like there's one more question in the chat. So maybe this one's going to be, it sounds like one has to purchase the highest level at $59 per user per month. So admins and owners have it, but then for lower users. So do you want to answer that one, Devanshi?
Yeah, sure.
So that one.
It's not like you'll have to purchase the highest plan. We have 3 subscriptions, standard, plus, and business. You can subscribe to any one of those plans. But yes, the subscription level will be same for all the users, and it can be either monthly or business, but it will be same for all the users, whether staff or paralegals, associates, attorneys, or admins or owners that you add inside the system.
Amazing. We got in that last question right at the end. Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I think Beth, you're the host now, so you can close us out.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you, everyone.